Hello and welcome again to Gaming Gatehouse and into this playthrough of Mass Effect 1. This is another addendum and we will return to the Codex and we will read the secondary entries of the Codex. And it is a video that I have been postponing for quite a while because I have to read them myself. No, this is the journal. The primary still has new information that we will save for another time, but the secondary, it is something. So we will start by the personal history summary of the Commander Shepard. Born into a naval family, you spent your childhood on ships and stations. You moved from posting to posting as your parents were reassigned. You enlisted in the Alliance military yourself on the day you turned 18. You were on shore leave at Elysium. You were on shore leave at Elysium when the first wave of the Skillian Blitz struck. A massive coalition force of slavers, crime syndicates, and Batarian warlords attacked the human colony, determined to wipe it out. You rallied the civil inhabitants, leading them in their desperate fight to hold off the invaders. When enemy troops broke through the colony's defenses, you single-handedly held them off and sealed the breach. After hours of brutal fighting, reinforcements finally arrived and the enemy broke ranks and fled. Because of your actions, Elysium was saved, and you are regarded throughout the Alliance as a true hero. Update, bring down the sky. Now this is a new one, I never read this before. I know basic about the Codex, but not this one, I never read it. Oh, yes I did. Technology, translation. Human cultures remain linguistically divided. Some converse in Spanish, others in Mandarin, Arabic, Swahili, etc. Every alien race has their own equally broad panoply of languages and dialects. Most individuals know only their mother tongue and rely on machine translation. Modern portable computers allow anyone with a few hundred credits of equipment to enjoy seamless real-time translation of alien languages, courtesy of handheld PDAs, computers in clothing or jewelry, or subdermal implants. Without fast and accurate translation, galactic trade and culture could not exist. Governments provide subsidized, that's right. Governments provide subsidized software, updated through the public extranet on the fly, often as users approach spaceport customs facilities. Even the Batarians, who isolated themselves from galactic society nearly 2 decades ago, take pains to provide up-to-date glossaries and linguistic rules, though must suspect this only so they can continue exporting propaganda. It is still considered broad-minded and practical to be able to speak without machine aid. Children often take courses in alien language, and most races can speak the simplified artificial thread tongue with little difficulty. Some species must rely on machine translation to interact with the rest of the galaxy. Hanar, for example, cannot reproduce the spoken language of any humanoid species, and other races cannot reproduce Hanar bioluminescence without mechanical aid. Newly discovered or obscure races don't have machine translation available until the linguists have had time to study them. I'm personally fascinated by the idea of alien languages. I wonder how if we find intelligence life forms, how we could communicate them. I think for starters we have to make a common ground to find what words, what ideas are common from both species. That is a topic for a really different discussion. Now, on with the Codex. Aliens, council races. Asari culture. Because of their long lifespan, Asari tend to have a long view, not common in other races. When they encounter a new species or situation, the Asari are more comfortable with an extended period of passive observation and study than immediate action. They are unfazed that some of their investments or decisions may not pay off for decades or centuries. Matriarchs can seem to make incomprehensible decisions, but their insight is evident when their carefully laid plans come to fruition. In interstellar relations, this long view manifests in an unspoken policy of centrism. The Asari instinctively seek to maintain stable balances of economic, political, and military power. Traditionally, Asari spread their influence through cultural domination and intellectual superiority. They invite new species of advanced development to join the collective community, knowing that their ideals and beliefs will inevitably influence the existing culture. We are better than you, so hurt us. I mean, the ideas have to... If the ideas are better, they are better. Asari military doctrine. The Asari military resembles a collection of tribal warrior bands with no national structure. Each community organizes its own unit as the locals see fit, and elect a leader to command them. Units from populous cities are large and well equipped, while those from farm villages may be only a few women with small arms. There is no uniform. Everyone wears what they liked. The Asari military is not an irregular militia, however. Those who serve are full-time professionals. The average Asari huntress is in the maiden stage of her life and has devoted 20 to 30 years to studying the martial arts. Asari choose to be warriors at young age, and their education from that point is dedicated to sharpening the mind and body for that sole purpose. When they retire, they possess an alarming proficiency for killing. Huntresses fight individually or in pairs, depending on the tactics preferred in their town. One-on-one, a huntress is practically unbeatable, possessing profound tactical insight, a hunter's eye, and a dancer's grace and alacrity. Biotics are common enough that some capability is a requirement to be trained as a huntress. Lack of biotic talent excludes a young Asari from military service. While fluid and mobile, Asari can stand up in a firestorm the way a Krogan, Turian, or human could. Since their units are small and typically lack heavy armor and support weapons, they are almost incapable of fighting a conventional war, particularly one of a defensive nature. So Asari units typically undertake special operations missions. Like an army of ninja, they are adept at ambush, infiltration, and assassination, demoralizing and defeating the enemies through intense, focused guerrilla strikes. As a popular Turian saying puts it, the Asari are the finest warriors in the galaxy. Fortunately, there are not many of them. Salarians, biology. Salarians are noted for their high-speed metabolism, which allows them to function on just 1 hour of sleep a day. Their minds and bodies work faster than most sapiens races, making them seem restless and hyperactive. The drawback of this active metabolism is a short lifespan of around 40 human years. The Salarians are amphibian, haplodiploid egg layers. Unfertilized eggs produce males, and fertilized eggs produce females. Once a year, a Salarian female will lay a clutch of dozens of eggs. Social rules prevent all but a fraction from being fertilized. As a result, 19% of the species is male. Salarians have photographic memories and rarely forget a fact. They also possess a form of psychological imprinting, tending to defer to those they knew in their youth. Salarian hatching is a solemn ritual in which the clan Delatras, matriarch, isolates herself with the eggs. The young Salarians psychologically imprint on her and tend to defer to her wishes. During the hatching of daughters, Delatrases of the mother and father's clans are present at the imprinting. This ensures the offspring have equal loyalty to both, ensuring the desired dynastic and political unity. Salarians, League of One. Before they joined the Citadel Council, the Salarians' most potent military tool was a small reconnaissance team known as the League of One. Their primary training was in espionage and assassination. Never more than a dozen strong, the team was adept at infiltrating the tightest defenses and eliminating all necessary obstacles. Only a few top members of government and military were privy to the League's identities. League members wore no distinguished garments and held no particular rank. The only evidence of their participation in the League was a small medallion presented to each member upon induction. This secrecy was maintained until the formation of the Council. In an effort to dispel rumors and appease their new Asari partners, the Salarian Union released all classified documents pertaining to the League. The League of One was suddenly exposed and in danger of being hunted by enemies of the Salarians. Before any harm could be done, the team mysteriously disappeared. Most assumed this was a convenient lie to help hide their identities, but a few months later, the inner cabinet was murdered. Though there was no incriminated evidence, it was clear who was responsible. Realizing the threat posed by this rogue outfit, the Special Tasks Group dispatched a team of hunters. When they didn't return, the SCG dispatched 10 of its righteous operators with broad discretionary powers. Only 2 returned. They reported no evidence of the League. No further incidents were reported, and it was assumed the League was wiped out. Some recently declassified documents, however, have suggested that there may have been a 13th member who eluded the Salarian military. Salarians Special Tasks Group. Salarian intelligence field agents are grouped into an organization called the Special Tasks Groups, SCG. SCG operators work in independent cells, performing dangerous missions such as counter-terrorism, infiltration, reconnaissance, assassination, and sabotage. The SCG is a proactive organization, puncturing worrisome trends before they become movements. At any time, a dozen groups are operating covertly within the lawless terminus systems, sowing dissent among the various factions. Civilian analysts also note how troublesome hinge points individuals in the terminus frequently meet unexpected deaths. SCG operators are feared throughout the galaxy for their clear-eyed, remorseless practicality. They are willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their mission, if it kills civilians or results in the team's own destruction. In many ways, they are akin to the Council Spectres. Recently, a number of SCG cells have been redeployed from Salarian Union. It is assumed they are in the Terminus and Addendum Traverse, investigating reports of Geth activity beyond the Perseus Veil. I like the Salarians. They look silly, but they are not that They are not stupid. They are more dangerous than they look. Turians, biology. The Turian homeworld, Palaven, has a metal-poor core, generating a weak magnetic field and allowing more solar radiation into the atmosphere. To deal with this, most forms of life on Palaven evolved from some form of metallic exoskeleton to protect themselves. Their reflective plate-like skin makes Turians less susceptible to long-term, low-level radiation exposure, but they do not possess any sort of natural armor. A Turian's thick skin does not stop projectiles and directed enemy bolts. Although life on Palaven is carbon-based and oxygen-breathing, it is built on dextro amino acids. This places the Turians in a distinct minority on the galactic stage. The Quarians are the only other known sapient dextroprotein dextroprotein race, the food of humans, Asari or Solarians, who evolved in levo amino acid based biospheres, will at best pass through Turian systems without providing any nutrition. At worst, it will trigger an allergic reaction that can be fatal if not immediately treated. Sucks, man. They cannot eat a burger or a pizza. Not that we know it, at least. Turians' culture. While Turians are individuals with personal desires, their instinct is to equate the self with the group and set aside personal desires for the good of all. Turians are taught to have a strong sense of personal accountability, the Turian honor that other races find so remarkable. Turians are taught to own every decision they make, good or ill. The worst sin they can make in the eyes of their people is to lie about their own actions. Turians who murder will try to get away with it, but if directly questioned, most will confess the crime. Turians have a strong inclination toward public service and self-sacrifice, so they tend to be poor entrepreneurs. To compensate, they accepted the mercantile Volus as a client race, offering protection in exchange for their fiscal expertise. The Turian military is the center of their society. It is not just an armed force, it is an all-encompassing public works organization. The military police are also the civic police. The fire brigades serve the civilian population as well as military facilities. The Corps of Engineers builds and maintains spaceports, schools, water purification plants, and power stations. The Merchant Marine assures that all worlds get needed resources. Turians, government. The Turian government is a hierarchical meritocracy. While it has great potential for misuse, this is tempered by the civic duty and personal responsibility Turians learn in childhood. Turians have 27 citizenship tiers, beginning with civilians, client races and children. The initial period of military service is a second tier. Formal citizenship is conferred at the third tier, after boot camp. For client races, citizenship is granted after the individual musters out. Higher-ranked citizens are expected to lead and protect subordinates. Lower-ranked citizens are expected to obey and support superiors. Promotion to another tier of citizenship is based on the personal assessments of one's superiors and co-rankers. Throughout their lives, Turians ascend to the higher tiers and are occasionally demoted to lower ones. The stigma associated with demotion lies not on the individual, but on those who promoted him when he wasn't ready for additional responsibility. This curbs the tendency to promote individuals into positions beyond their capabilities, which is I think is a good strategy. Settling into a role and rank is not considered as stagnation. Turians value knowing one's own limitations more than being ambitious. At the top are the Primarchs, who each rule a colonization cluster. The Primarchs vote on matters of national import. They otherwise maintain a hands-off policy, trusting the citizens on each level below them to do their jobs competently. Turians enjoy broad freedoms so long as one completes his duties, and does not prevent others from completing theirs. Nothing is forbidden. For example, there is no laws against recreational drug use, but if someone is unable to complete his duties due to drug use, his superiors step in. Judicial proceedings are interventions. Peers express their concern and try to convince the offender to change. If rehabilitation fails, Turians have no qualms about sentencing dangerous individuals to life at hard labor for the state. Okay, so you're doing a bad job. Let's talk through this. If you keep doing the bad job, you're going to prison forever. Turian's military doctrine. Although they lack the brutality of the Krogan, the skill of the Asari, and the virtuosity of the humans, the Turian military has formidable discipline. Officers and NCOs are lifers with years of field experience. Enlisted personnel are thoroughly trained and stay calm under fire. Turian units don't break, even if their entire line collapses. They fall back in order, setting ambushes as they go. A popular saying holds, "You only see a Turian's back once he's dead." Boot camp begins on the 15th birthday. Soldiers receive a year of training before being assigned to a field unit. Officers train for even longer. Most serve until the age of 30, at which point they become part of the reserves. Even if they suffer injuries preventing frontline service, most do support work behind the lines. Biotics are uncommon. While admired for their exacting skills, Biotics' motives are not always fully trusted by the common soldier. The Turians prefer to assign their Biotics to specialist teams called cabals. Command and control is decentralized and flexible. Individual squads can call for artillery and air support. They make extensive use of combat neurons for light duties and practice combined arms. Infantry operates with armor supported by overhead gunships. Strategically, they are methodical and patient, and dislike risky operations. Tradition is important. Each legion has a full-time staff of historians who chronicle its battle honors in detail. The oldest have records dating back to the Turian Iron Age. If a legion is destroyed in battle, it is reconstituted rather than replaced. The Turians recruit auxiliary units from Conqueror who absorb minor races. Auxiliaries are generally light infantry or armored cavalry units that screen and support the main Turian formations. At the conclusion of their service in the auxiliaries, recruits are granted Turian citizenship. They are similar to the society of the movie, the book movie, Starship Troopers. You only get citizenship if you serve the military. Turians, Unification War. At about the time the Solarians and the Asari were forming the Council, the Turians were embroiled in a bitter civil war. The Unification War, as it was later named, began with hostilities between the colonies furthest from the Turian homeworld, Palaven. These colonies were run by local chieftains, many of whom had distanced themselves from the hierarchy. Without the galvanizing influence of the government, the colonies began increasingly isolated and xenophobic. Colonists began wearing emblems or facial markings to differentiate themselves from members of other colonies, and open hostilities became common. When war finally broke out, the hierarchy maintained strict diplomacy and refused to get involved. After several years of fighting, less than a dozen factions remained, and the hierarchy finally intervened. By that time, the chieftains were too weak to resist. They were forced to put an end to the fighting and renew their allegiance to the hierarchy. Though peace was restored, it took several decades for an animosity between colonists to fade completely. To this day, most Turians still wear the facial markings of their home colonies. As a point of interest, the Turian term barefaced refers to one who is beguiling or not be trusted. It is also a slang term for politicians. Aliens, extant bases. Proteans, the beacon. The beacon was a protean artifact unearthed on the Alliance colony of Eden Prime. Its resemblance to the protean databanks recovered on Mars provoked immediate interest from the Alliance and the Citadel Council. It proved to be a solid-state data storage device, part of a galaxy-spanning comm network similar to the modern extranet. Intact protean paleotechnology is rare. The beacon seemed to promise another quantum leap of technology, akin to the discovery of the Mass Effect drive and relays. Unfortunately, the beacon also drew the attention of the rogue Spectre, Saren Arterius, and his synthetic allies, the Geth. A dawn raid by his flagship Sovereign resulted in hundreds of civilian casualties. The beacon was badly damaged. The motives behind the attack are still being investigated. During the recovery operation, the beacon fired a pulse of energy at the executive officer of the Alliance frigate Normandy. Lieutenant Commander Shepard survived and appears to have suffered no ill effects. Afterwards, the beacon fell inert. The mechanism appears to be dead. Yeah, this is a recap of the basically the first mission. Proteans Cipher. The Protean beacon downloaded its knowledge into Lieutenant Commander Shepard on Eden Prime, causing confusing dreams and visions. While the imagery is becoming clearer with time, the meaning of the beacon communication remains elusive. It has been suggested that protean data recording is highly dependent on a certain point of view, what Carl Jung described as the collective unconscious. The cipher needed to comprehend the images implanted in Shepard's mind is the cultural knowledge of a protean, the archetypes, biological instincts, and common experiences universal to the race. Since the proteans have been dead for millennia, it may be impossible to acquire this cipher. Proteans data disks. Despite all that evidence confirming the existence of the proteans, little is known about their culture and society. From time to time, dig sites will yield new clues, but after 50,000 years of decay, little of value is unearthed. Recent research has focused on the discovery of protean data disks. On their own, they are frail and rarely found in one piece. Occasionally, however, an intact disk will be discovered within a console or reading device. To date, over 3 dozen disks have been recovered, and a few of those have been restored to the point where researchers can begin analyzing them, though it may be some time before scientists discover a way to transfer the data of the disks. They are currently considered the most tangible leads for learning more about the Protean culture. Proteans, Mars ruins. After 20 years of manned research outposts and nearly a century of robotic exploration, the European Space Agency's Lowell City became the first permanent settlement of Mars in 2103. Within a decade, the United States and China had founded permanent settlements as well. The South Polar region of Prometei Planet developed a Bermuda Triangle reputation. Satellites detected intermittent mass concentrations and magnetic field shifts. In 2148, prospectors working near the Deseado crater discovered an underground complex, a Protean observation post. The odd phenomena were generated by the operation and discharge of a Mass Effect core, struggling to function despite 50 millennia of neglect. Earth was electrified by the news. Humanity was unequivocally not alone. While courts battled over who owned the ruins, the international scientific community coordinated a massive effort to access, translate, and interpret the databanks recovered from the facility. The facility proved to be a bioscience observation post built when Homo sapiens were first evolving on Earth. While the motives of the Proteans are not certain, translated records indicate that the facility was in regular communications with automated observation platforms in Earth orbit and on the lunar near side. The half-dozen Mass Effect spaceships found in the facility were presumably used for first-hand observation. Half a dozen of Mass Effect spaceships. Were they in working order? Aliens, non-council races. Geth, armatures. Armatures are quadruped, all-terrain heavy weapons platforms. Akin to the armored fighting vehicles of other races, Geth, being synthetic intelligence, armatures are not crude vehicles, but intelligent entities capable of independent decision-making and learning. Armatures are equipped with heavy kinetic barriers. Their main cannon, mounted on an articulated head turret, appears to be a highly efficient conventional mass accelerator. It is capable of firing in anti-personnel and anti-tank modes. Some armatures carry drones into battle, presumably for reconnaissance purposes. Others host a swarm of insect-sized repair robots. Geth hoppers. The Geth models, collectively dubbed hoppers by Alliance forces, are electronic warfare platforms. They can project electromagnetic radiation across a broad spectrum as an offensive weapon. They can also perform cyber warfare attacks against the onboard computers of body armor, hardsuits, and weapons, adversely affecting their performance. The structure of hoppers consists of an advanced and highly elastic artificial muscle material. This allows the hopper to compress his entire body for powerful leaps. Hoppers also have thousands of molecule-scale barbs on the surface of their hands and feet, which are used to cling to walls and ceilings. Hoppers are very difficult targets, leaping from one surface to another in rapid succession. The Quarians have no record of any Geth models similar to hoppers. This new morphotype must have been developed over the last 300 years by the Geth themselves. This is troubling proof that Geth are continuing to move towards technological singularity. Experts in synthetic life are intrigued that hoppers appear to be even more organic than the baseline geth. The identified subtypes of hopper have been codenamed Sapper, Stalker, and Ghost. Krogan culture. The harsh Krogan homeworld conditioned the Krogan psychology for toughness just as it did the body. Krogan have always had a tendency to be selfish, unsympathetic, and blunt. They respect strength and self-reliance and are neither surprised nor offended by treachery. The weak and selfless do not live long. In their culture, looking out for number one is simply a matter of course. After their defeat in the rebellions, the very concept of Krogan leadership was discredited. Where a warlord could once command enough power to bring entire solar systems to heel and become overlord, these days it is rare for a single leader to have more than 1,000 warriors swear allegiance to him. Most Krogan trust and serve no one but themselves. This solitary attitude stems in part from a deep sense of fatalism and futility, a profound social effect of the genophage that caused Krogan numbers to dwindle to a relative handful. Not only are they angry that the entire galaxy seems out to get them, the Krogan are also generally pessimistic about their race's chance of survival. The surviving Krogan see no point to building for the future. There will be no future. The Krogan live with an attitude of kill, pillage, and be selfish, for tomorrow we die. Krogan genophage. The genophage bioweapon was created to end the Krogan rebellions. From the start, the Krogan had overwhelmed the Council. Only timely first contact with the Turians saved the Council races. The Turians fought the Krogan to a standstill, but the sheer weight of Krogan numbers indicated the war could not be won through conventional means. The Turians collaborated with the Salarians to genetically engineer a counter to the rapid breeding of the Krogan. The genophage virus gained the energy to replicate by eating key genetic sequences. Every cell in every Krogan had to be altered for the weapon to be foolproof. Otherwise, the Krogan could have used gene therapy to fix the affected tissues. Once the genophage strain could find no more genes to eat, it would starve and die, limiting spin-off mutation and contamination. This created genetic flaw is hereditary. The Salarians believed genophage would be used as a deterrent, a position the Turian viewed as naive. Once the project was complete, the Turians mass-produced and deployed it. The Krogan homeworld, the colonies, and all occupied worlds were infected. The resulting mutation made only 1 in 1,000 Krogan pregnancies carry to term. It did not reduce fertility, but offspring viability. The rare females able to carry children to term became prizes the Krogan warlords fought brutal battles over. The Krogan are a shadow of their former glory. While the rebellions took place centuries ago, they are constantly reminded of the horror of the genophage, and of their inability to counter it. The release of the genophage is still controversial, bitterly debated in many circles. I mean, the Krogan would not listen to reason. This is the thing about war. Nobody comes out looking good. Only alive. Krogan. The Krogan rebellions. After the Arachni War, the quick-breeding Krogan expanded at the expense of their neighbors. Warlords leveraged their veteran soldiers to seize living space, while the council races were still grateful. Over centuries, the Krogan conquered world after world. There was always just one more needed. When the council finally demanded withdrawal from the Asari colony of Lucia, Krogan overlord Kredak stormed off the citadel, daring the council to take their worlds back. but the Council had taken precautions. The finest SCG operators and Asari hunters had been drafted into a covert observation force, the Office of Special Tactics and Reconnaissance. The Spectres opened the war with crippling strategic strikes. Krogan planets went dark as computer viruses flooded the extranet. Sabotage antimatter refineries disappeared in blue-white annihilation. Headquarters stations shattered into orbit-clogging debris, rammed by pre-placed suicide freighters. Still, this only delayed the inevitable. The war would have been lost if not for first contact with the Turians, who responded to Krogan threats with a prompt declaration of war. Being on the far side of Krogan space from the Council, the Turians advanced rapidly into the lightly defended Krogan rear areas. The Krogan responded by dropping space stations and asteroids on Turian colonies. 3 worlds were rendered completely uninhabitable. This was precisely the wrong approach to take with the Turians. Each is first and foremost a public servant, willing to risk his life to protect his comrades. Rather than increasing public wariness, Krogan tactics stifled Turian resolve. The arrival of Turian task force saved many worlds from the warlord's marauding fleets, but it took development of the genophage bioweapon to end the war. There were decades of unrest afterwards. Rogue warlords and holdout groups of insurgents refused to surrender or disappeared into the frontier systems to become pirates. Krogan military doctrine. Traditional Krogan tactics were built on attritional mass unit warfare. Equipped with cheap rugged gear, troop formations were powerful but inflexible. Command and control were very centralized. Soldiers in the field who saw a target contacted their commanders behind the lines to arrange fire support. Since the genophage, the Krogan can no longer afford the casualties of the whole horde attacks. The battle masters are a match for any 10 soldiers of another species. To a battle master, killing is a science. They focus on developing a clean, brute force economy of motion that exploits their brutal strength to incapacitate enemies with a swift single blow of overwhelming power. This change of focus from mass unit warfare to maximal efficiency has increased employment demand in the field of security and muscle for hire. Due to the unsavory reputation of the Krogan, most of these jobs are on the far side of the law. Battle masters are not spit and polished, but they do believe in being well armed and equipped, preferably with a gun for each limb. They are callous and brutal, but methodical and disciplined. They use any means at their disposal to achieve their goals, no matter how reprehensible. Hostage-taking and genocide are acceptable means to ensure. They use any means at their disposal to achieve their goals, no matter how reprehensible. Hostage-taking and genocide are acceptable means to ensure a quiet occupation with few Krogan casualties. The Krogan serving with Saren's forces appear to be returning to the old style of mass attritional combat. They also work in close cooperation with supporting Geth units, who fill the roles occupied by combat drones and in other armies. Biotics are rare among the Krogan. Those that exist are viewed with suspicion and fear. The Krogan see this aura of fear as a useful quality for an officer, and often promote them. Combat drones and another high-tech equipment are likewise in short supply. Quarian's economy. The migrant fleet has little economic base, operating in a state of perpetual hand-to-mouth. While Quarian ships include light manufacturing and assembly plants, they lack heavy industries such as refining and shipbuilding. The fleet has tankers for water purification and oxygen cracking, but the space-intensive nature of agriculture limits food production. A single disaster could destroy the fragile balance. The Quarians earn income in creative ways. Because the government is obliged to provide food, water, air, and medical support for every individual, the Conclave strategically determines the course of the fleet to bring its in resources and income. A species who suspects the migrant fleet is heading towards their space often offers a gift of surplus starships, fuel, and resources to convince the Conclave to alter course. As the fleet passes through a system, swarms of mining vessels work over stations for metals and siliceous materials and cometary bodies for water, ice, and organics. Quarian miners are adept at locating and strip mining space-borne resources. This sparks conflict with corporations already working the system. Large mining concerns spend millions of lobbyists and public relations portraying the Quarians as locusts, devouring the resources of a system before moving on. The greatest asset of the Quarians is their rarefied skills. Most are experienced miners. Due to their life of perpetual salvage and repair, they are skilled engineers and technicians. More than once, the very corporations that lobby against the Quarians have made backroom deals with the fleet, arranging for skilled Quarians to fill space engineering jobs that other species would demand higher wages for. Quarians are highly hated among the working classes. The Quarians are coming to get your jobs is a common response to the fleet's approach. Get their jobs. Okay. Quarians, government. Due to the Quarians' precarious existence and the need to enforce strict rationing, government is somewhat autocratic. The migrant fleet operations are directed by the Admiralty, a board of 5 military officers who are advised by a legislative body called the Conclave. Each vessel in the fleet has the right to send representatives to the Conclave aboard the flagship. The number of representatives is based on crew size. Larger clans with bigger ships and more votes form the cores of political blocs. Opposition comes from the Outriders coalition, with delegates from thousands of smaller ships. The Admiralty defers to the Conclave's decisions in most circumstances. However, if all 5 members agree that the Conclave's decision jeopardizes the survival of the fleet and cannot get the Conclave to address the concerns, they have the right to summarily overturn the legislative decision. After the Admiralty uses this extraordinary power, they must resign. If the Admiralty does not step down after using their veto, the rest of the military is obliged to arrest them. Each ship's captain has authority over his vessel, but is advised by an elected civilian council, just as the Admiralty is advised by the Conclave. This relationship may range from cooperation to polite tolerance to outright hostility, but any captain who overrules his council without good reason is relieved of command by the Admiralty. Many Quarian ships are owned by clans who pool their resources to purchase used vessels from private sellers. Large ships are prestigious for big, rich clans, but a small ship means status for a small clan with enough personal wealth to afford a private vessel. Clan vessel captains are not subject to dismissal by an admiralty. Abusive captains are a family problem if they do not disrupt the operations of the fleet. Quarians, Law and Defense. Although the Conclave establishes civil law much as any planet-based democracy, enforcement and trials are more unique. After the flight from the Geth, there are few constables to police the millions of there were few constables to police the millions of civilians aboard the fleet, so the Navy parceled out Marine squads to maintain order and enforce the law. Today, Quarian Marines have evolved training and tactics akin to civilian police, but remain adept at combat in the confined spaces of the starship and fully under the command of the military. Once taken into custody, the accused is brought before the ship's captain for judgment. While the ship's council may make recommendations, tradition holds that the captain has absolute authority in matters of discipline. Most are lenient, assigning the additional or more odious maintenance tasks aboard the ship. Persistent recidivists are accidentally left on the next habitable world. This practice of abandoning criminals on other people's planets is a point of friction between the Quarians and the systems they pass through. Captains rarely have another choice. With space and resources at a premium, supporting a non-productive prison population is not an option. In the early years, many Quarian freighters were armed and used as irregular privateers. Civilian ships still show a strong preference for armament, making them unpopular targets for pirates. Though they have rebuilt their military, they are still mere hundreds of warships to protect tens of thousands of ships. The Quarian Navy follows strict routines of patrol and takes no chances. If the intent of an approaching ship can be ascertained, they shoot to kill. I like that part of leaving the criminal in the planet. It's like this is like the Navy. They prefer to leave the criminal at the deserted island instead of keeping him in chains. Quarians, migrant fleet. The migrant fleet is the largest concentration of star-faring vessels in the galaxy, sprawling across millions of kilometers. It can take days for the entire fleet to pass through a mass relay. When the Quarians fled their homeworld, the fleet was a motley ration of freighters, shuttles, industrial vessels, and the odd warship. After 3 centuries, all have been modified to support larger crews as comfortably as possible. As the Quarians achieved stability, they began weeding out the ships least suitable for long-term habitation, selling them and pooling the money to buy larger and more space-worthy hulls. This process is ongoing as vessels wear out and break down. While some ships enjoy dedicated cabins with full privacy and sanitary facilities, many more are former freighters, whose cargo bays and containers are pressurized and divided into family spaces using simple metal cubicle bulkheads. The Quarians enliven these austere spaces with colorful quilts and tapestries, which also help muffle sound. The day-to-day operations of the fleet, traffic control, station keeping, supply, distribution, and so on are under military jurisdiction. Though ship captains have the authority to deviate from their assigned position and may leave the fleet at any time, they are soon to do so at their own risk. As the migrant fleet moves around the galaxy, many ships split off to pursue individual goals, returning days or years later. That is interesting. Quarians, pilgrimage. When Quarians of the migrant fleet reach young adulthood, they must leave their birth ship and find a new crew to accept them as a permanent residents. To prove themselves, they must recover something of value. This is offered to their prospective captain as proof that they will not be a mere burden on the shoestring resources of the ship. This process is called pilgrimage. Stripped of ritual, the pilgrimage is merely an attempt to maintain genetic diversity within the small, relatively isolated population bases that make up the migrant fleet. If the young stayed and married within their birth vessel, the risk of inbreeding would increase sharply. Quarians are surgically fitted with their various immunity-boosting implants in preparation for leaving on pilgrimage. Having grown up within the sterile control environments of the migrant fleet ships, Quarians have virtually no natural immune system. Quarians' religion. The ancient Quarians practiced ancient ancestor worship. Even after abandoning faith for secularism, Quarians continued to revere the wisdom of elders. As time passed and technology advanced, they inevitably turned their knowledge to preserving the personalities and memories of the elderly as computer virtual intelligence. These recordings became a repository of knowledge and wisdom, stored in a central data bank and available through any extranet connection. They held no illusion that this was a form of immortality. Like all virtual intelligence, the electronically preserved ancestors were not truly sapient. This was considered a surmountable problem. Sapience could surely be reduced to simple mathematics. The Quarians began exhaustive research into creating artificial intelligence so they could learn to escape the bounds of mortality and give their ancestral records true awareness. Unfortunately, the life the Quarians created did not accept the same truths they did. The gas destroyed the ancestor databanks when they took over. In the centuries since they evacuated their homeworld, most Quarians have returned to religion in various forms. Many believe that the rise of the Geth and the destruction of their ancestors were chastisement for arrogantly forsaking the old ways and venerating self-made idols. Others have a more philosophical outlook, believing that their race was indeed arrogant, but no supernatural agency lay behind the Geth revolt. Rather, the Quarians' actions wrought their own doom. Either way, every Quarian would agree that their own hubris cost them their homeworld. This doesn't say directly that the Geth were created to store the memories of the elder, but it seems like it. And that was so much. Whoa, there's still a lot to read. I'm approaching 1 hour. I think I'm going to pause. I'm going to interrupt this Codex, the secondary entries, and resume it for later, because to be honest, I'm getting tired. My voice is starting to wear down. It's becoming harder for me to to read properly in English, so I'm going to postpone the rest. And next video we will return to the planet explorations again. So this was a really nerdy video, and I thank you for staying with me, and I'll see you next time.